welcome to the Children's and Teen Health Summit. I'm your host, Carla Atherton, founder and director of the Lotus Health Project, lotushealthproject.com, where we empower people to get healthy and stay healthy in mind, body, and spirit, and on the social, global, and environmental levels. For this session of the summit, I am excited to be speaking with Mira and Jayson Calton about the importance of your children becoming micronutrient sufficient and getting enough vitamins and minerals to grow up healthy and strong. Mira Calton, CN, FAAIM, DCCN, CMS, CPFC, BCIH, is a licensed certified nutritionist, a fellow of the American Association of Integrative Medicine, a diplomat of the College of Clinical Nutrition, a certified personal fitness chef, and is board certified in integrative health. She holds a diploma in comprehensive nutrition from Huntington College of Health Sciences, has completed the Yale University School of Medicine's OWCH, which is the online weight management counseling for healthcare providers program, and currently sits on the American Board of Integrative Health. Mira's interest in nutrition came after having been diagnosed at the age of 30 with advanced osteoporosis. Working with her husband, Dr. Jayson Calton, to become micronutrient sufficient, Mira reversed her condition. They now work together to inspire others to do the same. Jayson B. Calton, PhD, FAAIM, DCCN, CMS, CISSN, BCIH, ROHP, is a fellow of the American Association of Integrative Medicine, a diplomat of the College of Clinical Nutrition, and is board certified in integrative health and sports nutrition. He has worked with thousands of international clients over the last 20 years to improve their health through his unique nutritional and lifestyle therapies. Dr. Calton majored in molecular and microbiology, pre-med, at the Burnett Honors College, School of Biomedical Sciences, and holds a Master's of Science degree and a PhD in nutrition. He has completed postdoctoral continuing medical education at Harvard Medical School, Cornell University, and Yale University School of Medicine, and sits on the board of directors for the American Holistic Health Association and the American Board of Integrative Health. The Caltons are among the world's leading experts on the topics of weight management, lifestyle medicine, and micronutrient deficiency. Their high success rate working with adults and children to achieve sustainable weight loss and reverse health and disease conditions has made their consultancy highly sought after by celebrities, athletes, and top corporate executives around the world. It is their belief that becoming micronutrient sufficient is the first step toward preventing and reversing many of today's most prevalent health conditions and diseases. Welcome to the summit, Mira and Jayson.
Oh, thanks so much, Carla.
Thanks for us.
Of course. I couldn't have had this without you because of the work that you folks have been doing lately, and we'll get into that very soon. But it's awesome to have you here.
Oh, thank you.
It's great to be here.
Okay, so, in reading that, your credentials and what you've been doing and studying throughout your careers, wow, you folks know a fantastic amount about nutrition. And just to sort of start off, I would really just like you to share with our participants, the parents and caregivers listening, and maybe some of their kids, what really fueled your passion for becoming involved in this kind of work?
Well, I guess I'll start with that one then. I was, like a lot of people out there, probably not very interested in nutrition.
Yeah.
I was living in New York, and I was absolutely clueless as to what I was doing to my own body and what things I was supposed to be doing. Mm-hmm. In fact, I was following, what I had heard was healthy, which I was following a very low-fat program. I was pretty actually fat phobic. And I was keeping myself really busy. I was working out a lot, and I had a really busy life. I had my own PR firm. And when I turned in my late 20s, I started noticing I wasn't feeling very well. Mm-hmm. And my back started aching and my hips started aching. And I blamed it on everything. I said, my shoes are too high and I'm staying out too late. And, I tried to, not believe that something was really wrong with me. By the time I turned 30, I was literally bedridden.
Oh, wow.
Doing my work from my couch, pretending to just be busy. And that's why I couldn't see clients personally. Mm. When in reality, I just couldn't go anymore. I finally was forced to go see a doctor at that point. And when I went to see them, I was 30, and I was diagnosed with advanced osteoporosis.
Whoa.
So I was told I had the bone density of a 80-year-old woman, and that I was going to be on medication for the rest of my life, and that the best I was going to get was that I wasn't going to get any more brittle or break any further, but that they weren't really trying on curing me or reversing my condition. They were just trying to make me sustain at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, this is not who I am. I'm 30.
Yeah.
And I was like, I have a lot more life to live. And so I started, I had to sell my company. I had to move back in with my family, take care of me. And I think when that all happens, you start to realize that you don't have anything if you don't feel good.
Yeah.
And I started looking for a holistic way of reversing my osteoporosis. I moved to Florida I moved in with my sister, and I started doing some research on the only other thing the doctor told me, which was that calcium would help my bones. And so I started doing some research, and that led me to magnesium and vitamin D and all these other things that I didn't know about. And I found a doctor who was willing to help me sort of really take a look at what was going on in my body. Luckily, we started working together on a program of supplementation and diet changes and lifestyle changes. And about 2 years into it, we decided to go and get another DEXA scan because I was feeling much, much better. And I wanted to see what was happening to my bones. I knew they were getting better, but I wanted actual proof. Mm. And we went, and I don't have osteoporosis. I don't have osteopenia even. Mm. We completely reversed it in only 2 years. And as an added bonus, I married my doctor. So that's
oh, cool.
And everything worked out very nicely. But that's why we're so passionate about this, because there's no way that I could have done this if I didn't know about micronutrients. And they affect every single disease out there: obesity, heart disease, cancer. Every single problem has at the root of it these same micronutrient deficiencies. And it's our main passion, our main goal in this life, to make other people have an understanding of what these micronutrients are, and not to be afraid of just that little word.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay, so I'm going to keep asking you questions, but Jayson, I think that I want to come back to your story. But what you just said, Mira, it makes me think about how passionate you sound, and I'm all about empowerment through education as well, right? So you empowered yourself through educating yourself about this, and to reverse an illness or a condition that could have, left you bedridden for the rest of your life at the age of 30. So you folks have written an amazing book, and you call it a GPS for the grocery store, for the, savvy shopper, someone who wants to, shop and buy food that will actually do what you're just talking about, that you just did. And it's like, this book is just phenomenal. It's just like exploding with facts and guidance and practical tips and information. So the first thing you do in that book is lay out what macronutrients are and what micronutrients are as a first step to understanding nutrition. So can you explain that?
Yeah, let's go into this and let's start to really dig into what these micronutrients are as opposed to macronutrients. Now, some of the people listening here right now may know what these two definitions are, and more than likely you may not. Or if you do, maybe not as well as you're going to in just a few seconds. Mm-hmm. So let's break this down. Macronutrients are things like fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. These are things that have a caloric value to them. And that's typically what we talk about when we think about nutrition. You go to a nutritionist, you go to a doctor, you read a nutrition book, and they're going to talk to you about maybe you should go on a lower carb diet, or they talk about lower fat diets, or maybe a higher protein diet. And they talk about these macronutrients as if they're kind of the only things in nutrition. And oftentimes this is where the conversation kind of stops with your typical nutritionist or doctor. There's another side of food. There's a potentially more important side of food, and that's the micronutrients. These are the non-caloric based parts of foods. These are things like vitamins, minerals, essential fatty acids, and amino acids. So they're kind of the building blocks. They're the pieces that our ancestors had a lot of them in our food, and over time in America and throughout the world, in Canada and all over the world, because of over-farming, because of shipping our foods in oftentimes from other countries altogether, because of factory farming, and because our animals are not in their natural environments and not eating their normal food anymore, these micronutrients are found less and less and less in our modern food. So food's changed really over the last 100 years in a big way. Instead of being the kind of ball of calories and micronutrients that it was for our grandparents and their grandparents, today we eat what we call naked calories. And that was actually the name of our first book that we wrote. So in essence, you're eating food that's full of calories, but doesn't have very many of these essential vitamins and minerals left in it. So there's two basic types of hunger. There's the type of hunger that we're all kind of familiar with when we don't eat when we should. If we go, 5, 6, 10 hours without eating, we start to get a stomach grumbling, and that stomach grumbling and that kind of, that you start to get hangry, they call it,
Yeah.
You go out there and it's like, okay, I need more calories. I need more food. Well, that's one type. Then there's another type of hunger, and that's the hunger that your body signals that your body gives you when you're not getting enough of these essential micronutrients. And it's totally different than the one hunger. This is usually kind of equates to food cravings. So lots of times people are like, I don't know why I'm eating. I don't know why I'm constantly eating all the time. I'm not even hungry. But it's that signal that your body's sending out saying, hey, you need to go get more food, because that food is supposed to be where these vitamins and minerals are. And so that's what our ancestors had to drive them on to get enough of these micronutrients. Today, it just leads to obesity.
Okay, so now would be a great time to introduce you, Jayson. So what led you on this path to discovering all of this, facts and working in micronutrients?
Well, I basically had two kind of realizations in my life. I started my education in the traditional medical sense in microbiology and macrobiology. I was pre-med. But after working in the field for a while, I've always had a love for nutrition, and I really look at nutrition as being kind of the new medicine, that is a way that you can prevent and reverse disease. And, back when I was making a decision to kind of move from medicine into nutrition, this was a theory that I had. And then I worked for many, many years in the field of nutrition, taking private clients. And I had done that for about 10 or 12 years before I met Mira. And I had seen, miraculous changes in people who started to pay attention to their nutrition. And I was teaching that macronutrient stuff. I was teaching, low carb dieting, or I was teaching people how to get enough protein in and to make sure that they could balance their calories. I was doing a lot like most nutritionists do. But when Mira walked into my office, she didn't need those things. More protein wasn't going to help her, or eating a lower fat diet certainly wasn't going to help, or eating even lower carbs. What she needed information on how to get her body to absorb those micronutrients. And so that's really when I started to change my focus from the macronutrient side to the micronutrient side. And I'll tell you, I couldn't have imagined how powerful micronutrients really are at that point. Now, looking back, I'm like, what was I doing? And that's why we're out there kind of, screaming from the top of our lungs. We may have this backwards, folks. Instead of coming up with your dietary philosophy and then finding out ways that you can add more micronutrients to that, we really should be focusing on creating a micronutrient sufficient diet and then letting your dietary philosophy follow that.
Ooh.
It's almost a 180 in nutrition. But the power of the micronutrients is, Mira proved it to me, and now hundreds and thousands of clients all across the country write us every single year talking about, when I made this one change, when I started to focus on my micronutrients over my macronutrients, everything just kind of fell into place.
Ooh, okay. So I'm going to ask you a question about that, because how do you do that? Like you said, Mira needed to, focus on how her body would be able to absorb those micronutrients. So, we have this key we want to put in and say, well, you need more carbs, you need more protein, just as you were saying, but is there a key you put in to say, to work on micronutrients, or is it a real, do you have to be an apothecary, knowing what to mix up, or is there an easy way to do that? Not easy, but a way that parents can coach their kids and to eat with their kids that does that very thing?
Absolutely. So the first step is we want you to get the most micronutrient rich foods.
Okay.
That's really why we created this book, is because we wanted parents to say, you know what, my child really likes to have, Kraft macaroni and cheese.
Okay.
I know because I read this book that it's filled with a whole lot of junk, a lot of chemicals and a lot of sugars and a lot of processed things. And it's not going to be filled with what I'm looking for my child, which is vitamins and minerals. So then what you do is you swap it out for a better option that is higher in micronutrients. It doesn't have all the chemicals. So that's really what parents have to look at is how can they serve food and bring food to the table every single day that supplies the most micronutrients. And that's what every single aisle of this book does, is we show you, for instance, if you're going to buy produce, you want to make sure to get local produce because the less distance that the food travels to the table, the more micronutrient rich they are. So the apple from the guy next door is a lot more micronutrient rich than the apple from across the country because it's a lot more fresh. So we go through little things like that. So that's step one, is eat micronutrient rich foods. The second step is just, try to cut down on any habits or anything that the child is doing or the parent is doing that, removes micronutrients from their body. For example, the kid's probably not having wine or coffee, I hope, but those are both micronutrient depleters. Stress is a micronutrient depleter. But then there's some things that the kids are doing that are actually healthy things like working out or going to the gym or being active. All of those things also deplete a child's micronutrients. So if your kid likes to play it rough and gets to play sports and stuff like that, you just want to make sure that you're doing step 3, which is supplementing. Because in today's society, the food just doesn't deliver, due to all the reasons Jayson was saying earlier, doesn't deliver enough of the micronutrients. And we have numerous studies on exactly how short we are actually coming on that. But the whole thing is you just have to take a well-formulated supplement. And we teach parents on our website how to find one, how to grade the product so they can stop wasting money.
Yeah. Yeah. And so this is really the concept behind your title, like rich food, poor food, right?
Right.
Absolutely.
So rich food doesn't mean you have to be rich to afford it. It means that it's rich in those vital micronutrients that we want to teach you how to find in the grocery store. So the book is really set up, so we give you just a little bit of kind of knowledge at the beginning. We give you the education that you need. We show you the ingredients that you don't want to find on a package, how to read a food label. These food manufacturers, they're pretty smart and they're savvy. They know how to lure you in, right? They do it through the textures and the colors and the advertising on the front of their packaging, and the words that they use, like natural as opposed to organic. When a lot of people think, well, natural, that's got to be really good. Well, it doesn't mean it can't be genetically modified. It doesn't mean that it can't contain sewage sludge. It can't. There's a lot of things that natural will still allow. So we teach you how to look at that, how to look at a supplement facts, and then eventually how to read what we consider to be the last bastion of hope for health-conscious consumers, and that's the all-important ingredient list. I mean, if you only get one thing out of what we're talking about today, if everything else just goes right past you, I want you the next time you go into the grocery store to read your ingredient list, even if you don't know what it says, even if you can't decipher it at this point. That's what Rich Food, Poor Food does. It will take you through each one of those ingredients, and in an easy to understand way and in a fun way, it'll show you what those ingredients do and how they may affect the micronutrient levels of the foods you're currently eating.
So a lot of people that, you can go into the grocery store and people, we just trust, right? Like, can't we just trust what we buy in the grocery store, that it's food?
No, not at all. Most of it is not food at all.
Heck no.
It's right now it's their job to sell you and make the most profit on a product. So they're going to try to make it as, as amazing taste and color wise as possible, because we eat more when things are brightly colored, that's been proven. And when they have intense taste like salt and sugar, that makes you crave more. So it's very interesting. These scientists have basically come up with, it's not your grandma making cookies and then putting, like Keebler elves on it. There's no real elves. No one's making real cookies. This is a scientific lab that somebody set up where they stir in a little of this MSG, which makes you want more, or they start mixing these things in labs, and their entire job is just to make it to the point where you mindlessly eat, literally for it to be so attractive that you forget you're eating it. So there's a name for that. It's actually called the bliss point. And that's their job. So no, your job as a mother, as a consumer, as a health conscious person, is to understand that what you're putting in your mouth is basically a culmination of the ingredients listed on the package. And those ingredients are going to determine how good you feel or how bad you feel. And they're going to determine if you get healthy or if you lose your health over time. So that's really what we want you to focus on. That's the only place it's going to tell you. The nutrition facts tell you how much fat, how much carbs, and how much protein is in there. And that's all well and good if you're trying to follow a specific ratio type program. But look, there's gluten-free, sugar-filled junk. There is low carb, powdered formula mixes that are complete nonsense. Every single type of protocol you can follow, they are going to figure out how to make a processed formulation for it that's going to have unwanted and unnecessary ingredients. So you really have to read the ingredients list.
Read the labels, know what you're buying and eating, right? Like it's very, where we live in North America, we are advertised to everywhere, right? And our children are even more susceptible to that. And you were mentioning the Keebler elves, there are all kinds of, different mascots and marketing ploys that our children see all the time. We live out in the country and we have there's a sign on the corner of the land next door that, advertising for something. Right. So you can't get away from it. So, yeah, your point is very well taken. Read the labels, be a savvy consumer, know that, they're trying to sell. If it's a product, have you ever seen a commercial for Beats, right?
Exactly.
I haven't.
Yeah.
If it's got a commercial, they're trying to make money.
What's interesting is some countries are actually way ahead of us in this. Mexico, and you don't think of Mexico as being the last bastion of great, health or anything like that. But they're actually making it so it's illegal for them to market to children at any time where children would normally be watching television.
That would be nice.
I know. It's amazing.
Yeah. Okay, so no, we can't just trust what's in the grocery store, and that it's even food, really, for us to eat, and that it's safe to eat. And so let's get into the aisles. Okay, so how you laid out this information for people is that you've gone through aisle by aisle discussing some poor choices, some alternatives to those poor choices, for rich choices for us to, navigate that grocery store. And so I really love that you call it a GPS, because really I think that, having something like this is really important for people, because it's just we're overwhelmed. And honestly, I spend a ton of time reading labels, and it's going to take a little more time until you kind of get, used to what things you're going to buy and kind of whip around there after a while, right? Because you're used to that, things, but mostly, shopping the perimeter and then picking up a few things from the middle. Is that kind of like a rule of thumb that you might use as well?
Well, yeah, I think that's, kind of the basic idea that a lot of nutritionists put out there. So, again, that's how they kind of tell you how to shop when you go to a nutritionist. They say, go to the perimeter and then try to stay out of the aisles. Well, that's all good and well until you've actually been in a real grocery store with a real cart of kids, and they're like, I want ice cream, and your husband gives you the evil look, and, you better have brought me home this or that. And okay. So now I need a realistic guide. One that's actually going to address all of the aisles and the perimeters, and that's what we really wanted to do. We wanted to come up with something, and we wrote Rich Food, Poor Food as much for ourselves and for our families as we did for everyone else. We wanted to make sure that we gave you not only how to find the rich foods in your grocery store, but exact name brands that you might be able to actually find as well. So for instance, we start off in the dairy aisle.
Okay, let's do dairy.
So we're going to talk a little bit about how to find the best dairy. Now, it wasn't that many years ago when dairy was delivered to people's homes in what we call just raw milk. We had raw dairy. Dairy was taken, the cows gave us the milk. The milk went into the big jug. It was put in the front stoop of the house in a glass bottle, and there it sat during the day. Nothing ever happened. Nobody ever got sick. There was a nice thick topper of cream on the top of it, and all of a sudden, in the 1880s or around that time period, farms were not as clean as they had been. People had just started getting sick off of the milk in small areas. It wasn't everywhere, but a few people did, and the government said, "What are we going to do about this? We have to protect Americans, because, dirty milk can create disease. So what they did is they created an idea, or an idea was presented to them, called pasteurization. Pasteurization is basically, a process of heating the milk so that it can kill bacteria and anything harmful that would be in the milk. What they didn't tell us is that pasteurization is also going to denature the milk, the proteins, and it's going to reduce the amount of those essential micronutrients. So, as consumers and as just people who want to learn about nutrition, one kind of general rule of thumb, and it's probably not any big realization, but always think about the fact that anytime human beings touch your food, you're losing micronutrients. You can do anything you want to food, by the way. You can chop it, dice it, slice it, cook it, microwave it, whatever you want. You never lose calories. But almost everything you do to food makes you lose those micronutrients. So we want you to find a milk out there if you're looking for, or a dairy in general. If you can find raw dairy, that's your number one. And lots of times you can do that with cheese if you can't find it with milk or cream. But so if you can do that, that's what's going to give you your most micronutrients. Then pasteurized milk, and then you want to try to stay away from ultra pasteurized, because obviously ultra pasteurizing means that they're using a higher temperature and a longer period of heat, which is going to reduce more of those micronutrients. Another thing you hear a lot about with milk is something called homogenization. So you notice you don't get that thick cap of cream on top of your milk anymore, and that's what homogenization does. It breaks up those fat particles, and it also breaks up those protein particles in such a way so that they become smaller, and so that they kind of stay dispersed in the milk, and you don't get that division of milk and cream anymore. Well, the problem is it also makes it so that those proteins and those fats can kind of go through your gut at a much faster rate, and this can cause allergic reactions and inflammation in the gut. And this is a big reason as to why a lot of people think, well, I must be allergic to milk, I must be lactose intolerant. Chances are you're probably not. You're probably allergic to either pasteurization or homogenization. It's just that we've been taught that, it's probably you're lactose intolerant, so you move on from there. Most people who drink raw milk or eat raw cheese find that they don't have a problem with it at all.
Because it's a complete food, right?
It's a complete food.
You can digest it.
We're supposed to be eating it, right? So in that aisle, we go over and we say, okay, well, we've got certain brands, and we outline the brands, but we
want to make sure it's organic as well.
Yeah, want it out. Yeah, don't talk a little bit about that, Mira.
You want to make sure that it's organic, because when cow is, when the milk says it's organic, that means the cow was raised a specific way. And one of the things that doesn't get allowed is they're not allowed to be fed GMO grains. So most cows these days, unfortunately, are fed GMO corn and GMO soy. And obviously cows are supposed to eat grass. That's why when you see them outside, they look so damn happy because they're eating that grass, and they're few and far between to get that. So they got something good. So you want to make sure that you're getting organic milk, because it means that your cows have not been fed genetically modified grains. Cows that have been fed genetically modified grains are sicker. They also are fatter, and their products tend to make people fatter as well. Additionally, they're not allowed hormones, they're not allowed antibiotics, all of these other things. And we don't want to need all of that in their systems, because then it gets transferred into our systems as well. So organic milk is really, really important.
Right. Okay, so that would lead us to meat too, right? Organic meat is also, it's very important to eat meat that is organic as well.
Right.
Organic meat is going to save you from the same genetic modification issues and the same antibiotics and hormones. But additionally, even if you were looking at micronutrients, we really want to look at grass-fed, because again, when they're fed what they're supposed to, what their natural feed is, their bodies actually produce higher amounts of micronutrients.
Okay. So let's talk about meat. Let's go to that aisle.
Okay.
So in the meat aisle, of course, like Mira was saying, we're going to want to find organic meat. We're going to want to look for grass-fed. Now, grass-fed is a common term, which can mean that the cow was allowed to eat some grass, but then it's also fed, corn and other types of feed as well. But a better term to look for is pasture-raised. Or 100% pasture-raised or grass-fed and grass-finished.
Finished, yeah.
Right. So that means that that cow is fed grass all the way from birth all the way through processing. And that's really what you want, again, because without eating the grass in the right quantities at the end, you lose a lot of what's called CLA, or conjugated linoleic acid, which is a special kind of fat that cows only get when they eat grass, but they lose a lot of that if they're not finished on the grass. So that's what you want to look for on the packaging.
And then for chicken, it's really the highest quality you're going to want is organic pasture or pasture-raised chickens.
Okay.
That's really the go-to. If you want to get really specific, if you find an air-chilled organic pasture chicken, that's Rockstar. Because air-chilled means that rather than normally when the chicken is slaughtered, they dunk it in a big pool with all the other chickens. And that's how it gets cleaned and stuff. And it absorbs a lot of the water and the bacteria that's in that tank.
Okay.
Air-chilled are actually air-chilled, just exactly like it sounds. So they actually have 80% lower than the water-chilled chickens, and you're paying per pound.
Okay.
You want to make sure to save some money, too.
Right.
You're actually getting the best quality, and that would be an air-chilled.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. And also, what about, more about meat? It's important for them to be outside, right?
Well, that's it. No,
for sure.
No, all animals, so we call it natural feed and environment. This is a micronutrient depleter when the animals are not allowed to be raised in their natural environment or fed their natural diet. And, again, probably not a big revelation for a lot of people out there, but when we think about it, how many of the animals, how much of the protein that we're eating on a daily basis really was allowed to be in its natural environment or eat its natural feed? Probably not too many. Just like we take sunlight and convert that to vitamin D in our bodies, animals do the same things. Cows, chickens, all of those animals need to be put outside. Another thing is chickens, in case people don't know, are herbivores, more carnivores than plant eaters. They want to be around those bugs, those grubs, those insects. They need that protein. So, a pure vegetarian diet for a chicken is not a great idea. And of course, I don't know how much people know about cows, but cows' main food supply, if not its only food supply, should be grass. It has 4 chambers in its stomach, very specifically because it is a grass-eating machine. And it's not supposed to be eating soy. It's not supposed to be eating corn. All these things cause the farmers to have to use antibiotics and all kinds of medications on these animals to drive down the inflammation, drive down the illnesses that they suffer because we've changed their diet. So you want to be outside, you want to be in the fresh air, and when you look at that from a micronutrient perspective, it pays huge dividends in how much more micronutrients are actually in your food. It doesn't look any different in the package, but what's actually in the food is a lot better.
Okay. And so, and then there are a lot of times parents will pack lunch, right, for their kids that has deli meat in it. And so do you have any comments about deli meat?
Don't do it.
Okay.
Deli meat, it's just as easy for you to take chicken that you made and just slice it up. And that way you're absolutely sure what you're giving them. The problem with deli meat is that there's so many ingredients in there, from synthetic nitrates to non-organic spices to all sorts of sugars and syrups. And basically it's just like a whole bunch of, it's like pressed meat into a jam container. It's not you don't know what you're getting, basically. So we want to make sure that if you're going to use meat, just to cut up the meat yourself. It's going to taste better because it's going to have all the correct things. Now, sometimes people tell us this is going to get expensive. And so we just want to make sure that people understand it doesn't have to get expensive. In fact, we give a lot of tips on how you can save money, like going to local farms. And we have on our website places that'll help you to locate local farms in your area in our Rich Food Resource Center. Because we save a lot of money by doing that. We go and we put a freezer into our garage, which costs us, I think, $80 an entire year to keep cold. Yep. And we just go and pick up a whole bunch of chickens.
Yeah.
A whole bunch of chickens, put them in there for whenever we want them. Yeah. Or we buy, a quarter of a cow. And when you start doing that, you can really save a lot of money.
Yeah.
Carl, this was kind of a big realization for me. We were in the grocery store. I'm just going to tell you this quick story because I think parents will be interested in hearing it.
Yeah.
In the grocery store, and we were looking through the meats, and I came across Hormel Natural Choice 100% natural Canadian bacon.
Okay.
And it was in a package, and it was in a clear, so you could see through it. It had the kind of the cellophane on the front, and it looked just like you might expect Canadian bacon to look. And so I didn't really think much of it. And I thought, well, I'll just flip this over and see if there's any sugar in here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it turns out that this was one of the worst deli meats we found. And this is why I want you to read the ingredient list. When I turned it over, what looked like sliced Canadian bacon contained more than 30 ingredients, including sugar, molasses, corn syrup, brown sugar, honey, pineapple juice concentrate, hydrolyzed soy protein, hydrolyzed corn gluten, caramel color, wheat starch, soy flour, and soybean oil. I mean, where is the meat?
You should see my face. It's squinched up.
It's incredible. So yeah, and for kids, they've got these Oscar Mayer ham and cheddar Lunchables. Have you seen these?
Yes.
They say, well, you give the kids, they've got all kinds of little things in there. They've got, a cookie. They've got, this one that we looked at had 61 ingredients.
Oh.
So, I mean, it's just don't be fooled by the marketing. You really do have to start to look at it. And you might say, well, I don't have time. These Lunchables, the kids love them. Well, they're going to love just, regular cheese that you do. It takes 2 seconds to slice it up, right? Mm-hmm. It's not very difficult.
And they haven't been sitting in the grocery store for months on end waiting for someone to purchase them.
Yeah. They taste just as good thrown into, like some kind of a Ziploc baggie as they do in their, in their fancy plastic containers with cartoon characters on them. So, it may not be what your kids are used to, but by making these small changes as you go through the aisles, you'll find that by following aisle by aisle, it really is easy by the time you get done and be like, okay, I can kind of create my own Lunchable pack.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. I was going to actually add a story to it just real quick. Like, this is always, you get into the grocery store and you're thinking, okay, we're hungry. And this is kind of crazy. And, people are melting down and, just as you were mentioning earlier in the interview. And so, you got a cart full of kids. My kids are a little older now, but it's still same deal. And so when we're hungry, and we have some food issues. We can't do soy, we can't do gluten, right? And we don't do MSG and a lot of additives. Okay. So, there's a roast chicken over there. Is that the best we can do? Okay, it's not organic. Okay, maybe we'll just close our eyes to that one. Okay, let's see what's in it. And I asked them, nobody knows. We've got to look up something, find the box where they got the seasoning. Okay, so finally I found 3 people later could tell me what was on the chicken. And we found there was soy, gluten, and MSG, etc. I think there was even dairy honestly, there was everything you could possibly think of sprinkled on the chicken. And so that's where reading labels is so important, because I would have been really sick actually had I eaten that and thinking maybe it's just a little salt and pepper, but no, you need to know what's in it. And it took us an extra probably 15 minutes and a lot of frustration. And my kids going, Mom, do you really have to do this right now? And I'm like, yes, I do. Sorry, we got to know. And just that extra time, and it seems like a real hassle, but really what's the hassle of that as opposed to me being sick for whatever and a week, because it affects me. So to know what you're eating is just essential, and to just ask, read, do all that stuff. Just do the homework because it's worth it.
Spice mixes are one of the worst.
Oh, yes. Please talk about that.
There's always bad ingredients in them, and they use them in all of the meats across the board, on all of the chips and everything in the pre-made section in the grocery store. Mm-hmm. You're getting these spice mixes. They're made up of MSG, a flavor enhancer that's an excitotoxin, which basically makes you eat 40% more every single time and spikes your insulin. They always contain sugars. Now, sugar, additionally, if it's not, and you better bet it's not going to be organic, cane sugar. The sugar is usually from a GMO sugar beet, which you don't want either. It's going to be the salt that they use in these things is not going to be a nice Himalayan salt where it still has all its minerals. It's going to be a cheap white table salt, which guess what? Usually contains dextrose these days, another form of sugar. So it's just really, that's one of those places that people need to really consider. And that's, it would be nice if we could say that going and getting something that's pre-made would make your life easy. Unfortunately, that's one of the most dangerous sections of the grocery store, because if it's not the spices, it's the oils that they're using that'll kill you.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to applaud you for doing this, because I know it takes a lot more time. As a parent, it would be much easier for you just to have closed your eyes, put the chicken in the cart, and moved on.
Yeah.
But, for parents listening right now and thinking, I would love to be able to do that too, but I don't know if I know as much as Carla does, or as I know as much as the Caltons do. I mean, how would I even get to the bottom of it? Listen, rich food, poor food is gluten-free. It's MSG-free. Every single possible thing that is bad for you, rich food, poor food is free of it. The only thing left in the foods that we recommend and we show you how to find are wholesome micronutrient foods. So there isn't anything you have to worry about. Once you take it aisle by aisle and you spend just really and truly, it's only the first time you do the aisle, because once you identify the rich foods in that aisle, now you're not wondering, what coupon this week, or, what's on sale. Now I know that there's 3 rich foods in this aisle. It's the same rich foods I buy every month. Maybe, I'll take a look around and see if they brought a new brand on or not. But here's the deal. I know exactly what I'm buying. I trust the brand. I've read the ingredient list, and my shopping time is cut in half.
Yeah, it is. It is for sure. And so we've got some icky stuff, to do with meat and stuff to watch out for. And also, so let's talk about too, really quickly touch on, because we're really on a roll and we got lots left to cover, you guys. So, bone broth and, how do you say that, offal? Those are 2 of the original superfoods you talk about in the book, which you could switch over to with your family.
Yeah, I mean, here's one of the things. People make chickens, like a rotisserie chicken, and they throw the bones out.
Yeah.
It's incredible. You can take that same thing that you think is garbage and make it into your next meal. You saved a ton of money, and what you're getting out of that is you're getting all of the minerals and the vitamins out of those bones and into your broth.
Yeah.
So you're not wasting anything. And that's really important. And then you can just keep it in there, and you can have a little bit every single day. And it's a really nice, almost an early man's medicine.
Right. I mean, almost one of the things that we did, and we didn't talk too much about, and I won't go into it too much, but just so the people listening now know, we traveled for 7 years to 135 countries on every continent on this planet, living with remote tribes to learn how their lifestyle habits and how their dietary habits affected their health. And one of the things we saw over and over and over again were these bone broths. I mean, you don't even have to go to remote tribes in Papua New Guinea to see it. You can also think back to your parents or your grandparents and their parents. They'd always have one of these bone broths kind of going on the stove. And it would be a reduction. They'd turn it into soups. They turn it into stews. And so you had the benefits of all those vitamins and minerals, those micronutrients, in those bones out into the soup that we would consistently eat. Now, in today's world, how many times do you walk into a modern home and find, a reduction or some kind of a broth on the stove? Very rarely. If you're one of those people who just don't have time to do it, first, I encourage you to try to do it once in a while. But if you don't, there are a lot of great companies out there now. You can order the bone broths right over the internet.
And there's no work to it. It just soaks. You could be running your own day and put the crock pot on and then leave. Yeah. It does it by itself. So the excuse of it takes too much time is that. And that's another thing. People need to be accountable.
Yeah.
It's one thing to say, it takes much time. It's another thing for that to be true. And a lot of this stuff lasts in the freezer. You can just stick it in the freezer and have it whenever you need it. But it's up to you. I mean, it might take too much time to read ingredients lists as well. But then you have to be accountable for your own health. So these are just things that, unfortunately, in today's day and age, you have to do. And it's very, very easy to make bone broth. So I highly recommend people to try it.
Yeah. And just for anybody who's thinking about getting rich food, poor food, after hearing this conversation, on page 102, we've actually got a no taste like home recipe, a quick, easy recipe of how to do bone broth right at home for yourself.
Great information. So, okay. So offal, is that how you say it? Awful?
Yeah, it's like awful. Yeah.
And it's not awful.
But people throw it away because they think it's awful. It's for the cats, for the dog. What is it?
It's just the internal organ. So again, in all these cultures around the world, from, Indians through
Africa, everywhere.
Amazon, Africa, the hunters themselves. It was the whoever created that kill and whoever got that animal was typically rewarded with those what we call offal today, or the liver or the heart or the intestine. This is where all those micronutrients are. If you want to know what probably the most micronutrient packed food in the world is, it's liver. I mean, hands down, it pretty much has everything you can possibly want. A lot of people don't like liver, but that's where those micronutrients are packed in. So, now we throw them away, but try to incorporate them into your meals. I mean, Mira has an amazing recipe.
I didn't put it in that book.
You didn't put it in the book?
It's a secret.
You can find it out on our blog.
The next book.
It'll be the next one. She takes the liver and we literally liquefy it in our blender, and she pours it right in on top of the beef or the pork or whatever we're doing to make meatloaf. And you can't even tell. If anything, it just adds a richness to the flavor.
Yeah. Done that. It's a good way to sneak it in.
Yeah, sneak it in for the kids. They're not going to sit down to a big plate of,
No, they don't.
But you can get it in there, and I really highly recommend that you do, because like I said, there probably isn't any better food for you than liver.
Of course, you're not supposed to eat it every day. Interestingly enough, because it is so jam-packed, you're actually not supposed to eat it every single day because it is specifically extremely high in specific micronutrients. Yeah. So you just want to, obviously don't overdose on it. No one really does.
No, I don't think they do. Like once a week kind of thing.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Okay, so let's move to fish and seafood. Let's touch on that a little bit.
Wild caught. That's the word you want. That's what you got to look for. If it's not wild caught, the opposite is farm raised. And that's what most fish is these days, unfortunately. Farm raised fish have far fewer micronutrients. Again, they're not eating their natural feed. They're not living in their natural environment. Their musculature is even off these days because they're not swimming anywhere. They're basically just sitting in a pen filled with sea lice, which is disgusting in and of itself. They're usually dyed colors, artificial colors, which are bad for you, simply to make you think that they are fresh and lovely looking. And they're just not micronutrient rich. You want smaller fish in general over bigger fish because the waters happen to have quite a bit of mercury these days and some other pollutants. What happens, obviously, is the bigger the fish, the longer it's been living and the more of a predator is, which means that fish has been eating a lot of other fish, which also are contaminated. So the larger the fish, the more contaminated it generally is, or the more chemicals it usually has inside. So smaller fish, wild caught or line caught.
Yeah, our number one, we've got basically 7 of our top choices for fish. Wild salmon is number 1. Oysters would be number 2. Wild rainbow trout would be 3. Alaskan king crab, 4. Catfish, 5. Sardines, 6. And haddock is our 7th pick. And those are our top picks based on micronutrient content as well as low chances of having any heavy metal toxicity.
Awesome. Okay, so let's move to produce. This is a big one.
Yeah.
Well, we've got something, produce is so hard. What do you do? Do you spend the extra money that you've got to buy organic, or are there specific things that you don't have to buy organic? Because, in all reality, when you're looking at produce, how organic is going to protect you is 2 basic things. You want to make sure that it has low pesticide residue. So that's one of the things that we've kind of brought to the table when we evaluated whether or not you need to buy them organically or not, as well as are those produce currently genetically modified? So we don't want you eating genetically modified food. And we don't want you eating food that are just laden, with all kinds of pesticides. So what we did is we created a list, again, in our book, Rich Food, Poor Food, and you can get it for free when you go to the Rich Food Resource Center at our website, CaltonNutrition.com, and it's called the Fab 14 and the Terrible 20. And quite frankly, it means that the 14 foods that we've got listed in the Fab 14, you don't have to buy organic. Save your money. These are things like onions and avocados and pineapples and asparagus. You can see the whole list on the website. And there's the Terrible 20. And these are the 20 foods that we would highly recommend that you do spend the money and buy organically. Top the list with over 42 pesticides in the average apple. Celery is on there, peaches, strawberries, grapes, lots of stuff we put in lunch boxes for our kids. So you want to make sure you get that list.
Yeah. And some of these things like the Terrible 20, would you say that just don't buy it? If you can't buy it organic, just don't buy it?
We do now.
Yeah.
I would say that.
Absolutely. Sometimes it's just because it's always genetically modified, such as your yellow cricknick squash or your Hawaii papaya, your sweet corn, obviously. And sometimes it is for the pesticides. Additionally, because so much of our food is sprayed these days, it's sprayed with something called glyphosate.
Okay.
And glyphosate is actually put on, it's basically Roundup.
Okay.
Which a lot of people have heard of by Monsanto. And they actually spray it on what they call Roundup Ready fruits and vegetables. Basically means that these are not going to die when they're sprayed with this chemical. So they have this corn that they spray down. And what happens is this glyphosate or this pesticide actually kills everything around it. But it doesn't kill the fruit or vegetable. Now, this is a real problem because how does it kill everything around it? It suffocates them and kills them by not giving them micronutrients.
Wow.
Really important because that means that anything that's sprayed with this pesticide is also going to be micronutrient deficient. So that's just another reason you really want to get things that aren't sprayed.
Exactly, because what's the point of eating it then?
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, I mean, look at all these
That's
things.
why they don't taste like anything either.
Yeah.
The tomato usually just tastes like red.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like a red, wet thing. And you're like, what is this? It doesn't
Where's the flavor? That's another thing people don't realize is micronutrients equal flavor. I mean, have you ever traveled to Italy and tried a tomato, from the mountainous region? The volcanic soil there has so many micronutrients and minerals in it that the flavors just burst. And when you eat something that doesn't have that flavor, but it looks good from the outside, again, those are micronutrient depleted foods. So those spices are, a lot of times people think, well, are spices micronutrients? Spices contain micronutrients because, again, it's the flavor component of the food. So the more micronutrients food has, the more flavorful they are.
Okay, so what's the next thing that you might say about produce, aside from it being, really important that it's organic, non-GMO?
Well, it's really important that when you're planning your meals out, you want to make it as colorful as possible. The whole idea is that you don't want to serve not only is it going to be more satisfying to your eyes, to see a salad that's got yellow and red and green and little white mushrooms, but it's also going to be much more satisfying to your body because the different colors that different things are actually telling you a little bit about which micronutrients are inside. So very similar things in all the reds, similar things in the yellows, the greens, the blue purples like blueberries and stuff like that. So you really want to try to create meals that give you a little bit of all of those that balance out your micronutrients.
Yeah. There's a way to up even the best produce for micronutrients, and that's to ferment them. Is that right?
Yes. Well, you can. We love fermented food. So, things like sauerkraut, kimchi, pickles, these type of things are easy ways that you can, get the good gut bacteria that fermented foods can bring. But also too, fermenting can even create new vitamins like B vitamins and vitamin K2, which a lot of times we don't get enough of. Here's a good tip for vitamin K2 if you're looking for a way to get it in, because really the only source of vitamin K2 in the diet is something called natto, which is a fermented soybean is popular in Japan. Probably don't have it in the U.S. and in Canada. Foie gras, which a lot of people love but don't eat very often. But the best source of it, the easiest source, is Gouda cheese.
Yeah, so listen up, parents. You might not know this, but most of your children's bones need to be growing by the time they're teenagers. You need to have strong bones in place or they will never have strong bones. K2 is a really interesting micronutrient. I had to learn a lot about this with my bones. K2 is really one of those interesting micronutrients. K2 is actually the thing that, say your child drinks a glass of milk and it's got calcium in it. Now that calcium is going to go swimming around in the body and it has no idea where to go because calcium just doesn't do that job. Calcium doesn't have that function. It doesn't know where to go. It's going to go into their arteries. It's going to go into their blood. And now the thing is, you have a K2. If K2 is put in the body, say through the Gouda cheese that you give your child a snack on, the Gouda cheese is kind of like the director. And that's going to say, yo, calcium, get out of that, get out of those arteries and go in those bones. We're building bones together. So that's the job of K2. So it's really important because almost no food has K2. So a lot of people and a lot lot of kids aren't getting, because K2 is found in weird animal products. It's in the offal type stuff.
Yeah.
So unless they're eating that, they're not going to have that director, and their bones aren't going to build strong enough.
Yeah, and I just want to jump in and kind of just make sure parents listening right now might be thinking, well, that's all right. My kid's vitamins got vitamin K in it. Vitamin K is not vitamin K2. There are two forms of vitamin K. The kind of vitamin K that's typically found in a vitamin, if it's in there at all, which it's usually not. So if you're using one with vitamin K, that's good. But it usually comes from green leafy vegetables. It's great for helping the blood coagulate, and that's vitamin K1. It is not the same K that your children need to direct the calcium out of the arteries and into the bones. That's vitamin K2. And you definitely want to look for a multivitamin that's going to contain MK4 and MK7, both forms of that vitamin K2, for best results.
And K2 is one of those things like D, like vitamin D, you don't get in, a lot of foods. You need to be out in the sun. And a lot of people like to supplement with that, like especially us, we're north enough that we don't get enough sun.
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. And actually, anyone above Atlanta, most of the year can't get enough sun. And you think of Atlanta as south most of the time.
Yeah.
So,
that's down south for me.
That's telling you how many people. And additionally, a lot of foods deplete vitamin D from the body. So all grains, seeds, they all contain something called phytic acid, which actually depletes the vitamin D that you might be eating.
Yeah. And it's funny that you mentioned vitamin D, because vitamin D is another one of those synergistic micronutrients along with vitamin K2 that helps the body to increase absorption of calcium, meaning that if your vitamin D is sufficient, you're going to be able to absorb the calcium that you need to build those strong bones at a much higher rate than a person who would be deficient in vitamin D. Yeah. So, it starts to become almost like this big orchestra. You got to make sure the clarinets and the flutes and the harps are all there. And those are all those different micronutrients that you're going to be getting from the food as well as your properly formulated supplement. And it really is important, that we at least bring that up to a certain extent. We'll still talk more about the grocery store, and the grocery store is your first kind of place to find those micronutrients. But don't be fooled. A good diet more than likely is not going to be enough to create a sufficient state that your child's going to need to actually prevent diseases in the future. You're probably going to need a good diet and a proper formulated supplement.
Yeah, and that absorption, with the D and the K, you were sort of referring to that, about Mira's issues that you had, Mira, years ago, being able to absorb those nutrients, those micronutrients. And we actually use a combination, like a supplement by Thorne that uses D and K and has K2. So that's really nice. It's a little drop, like a couple of drops a day, and keeps my kids all good to go.
We actually created a product for myself.
Yeah.
That is actually child friendly as well. My nieces and my nephews and everyone takes it. It's called Nutrients, and it's a full spectrum of every single micronutrient that we studied, and it's in a drinkable powder, which is great. So it's just like a drink mix, and we make it in a Jell-O for the kids. We put it in ice cream. We do all sorts of stuff.
Well, and that way you don't have all the fillers that you'd get in those capsules that you often find. Because that's why I never did. It took a long time to find the right mix for my kids, because I didn't want to buy the stuff the chewables that had sugar in them to make the kids eat them, and like all the other crap that was put in as to keep the kids happy or to keep the capsule itself together.
Yeah, no, that liquid vitamin D, vitamin K2 that you're using with Thorne is a very good quality product.
Yeah.
Nutrients, of course, contains all the vitamins and minerals that they'll need. So it contains the calcium and the magnesium and everything in the right quantities and paired correctly so that you get the highest absorption. So they can be used together, or you can, when you're looking for, supplementation, you want a great multi that your child's going to take every day. Yeah. And then if you feel like they need a little bit more of the K2, if they have bone issues, or if you want to get a little bit more vitamin D, then you can use a product like the one you were talking about.
Yeah, great. Okay, and then Mira, you mentioned grains. Okay, so I'm going to skip over condiments for now, and we're going to go straight to grains, and then we'll go back to condiments. But grains, I'm just going to let you guys go hard on that one.
Oh, grains, go away. Grains, what do they do for you? They make you fat, okay? The American government stuck them in there as a cheap filler because they were basically growing them themselves. So they gave all sorts of subsidies. The problem with grains is, of course, the wheat of today is not the wheat of our grandparents. It's a very crude, genetically modified grain. So it's not the 2 foot, it's now 4 feet tall, 6 feet tall, amber waves. And basically it's like, grains on crack. It's this massive problem because it doesn't contain the same proteins that we're used to and that our bodies are used to. So it's creating all these gliadin proteins and gluten and the lectins, and all they do is cause gut permeability. So that's a really big problem. Unfortunately, the government still has not yet. They're turning a little bit, but not quite fast enough to actually say that they were wrong in this. America got its fattest period during the period of time where it started to tell us to eat more grains. That's when America grew the biggest, because it was the grains and the sugar got put in and the meat and the fats got taken out. Grains make you eat more. On average, I think it's 400 calories more per day. Additionally, a piece of wheat bread will spike your insulin more than a candy bar.
Yeah.
So it's, there's really nothing great about it. It's a cheap filler. And that's really all it is. And micronutrient-wise, it doesn't offer you much. It has some B vitamins, which you can get in other places. But it also has phytic acid, which steals your micronutrients from you.
Yeah, an anti-nutrient, right?
Exactly. It's one of the anti-nutrients. The basic anti-nutrients are your phytic acid, which is in your seeds and your nuts. And I think there's other foods that it's in as well. Oxalic acid, naturally occurring in spinach, kale, green things. But that's also another anti-nutrient.
Yeah. I mean, so when parents listening now might be like, okay, so if my kids are eating foods that have phytic acid in them, things like Mira said, nuts, seeds, grains, especially whole grains, rice, pasta, corn, cereals, what is it going to do to them? Well, that phytic acid binds or chelates to the minerals and vitamins, including magnesium, copper, calcium, manganese, chromium, iron, zinc, and niacin. It also accelerates the metabolism of vitamin D. Remember, Mira was saying some foods actually help to deplete vitamin D. What it does is it creates a faster metabolism, so your body burns through the vitamin D that you do get at a faster rate, making it so that you have to absorb more than at a faster rate. The oxalic acid is found in things like seeds, nuts, spinach. If you are putting spinach in your shakes and blending them up raw right now, listening, I want you to stop doing that.
Okay.
Anybody, okay? If you want something green in there, go get a red leaf lettuce
or cook the spinach and then put it in.
Or cook it. But spinach has one of the highest levels of oxalic acid. And that was something Mira was doing every day when she got her osteoporosis.
I used to love me spinach salad.
Every single day raw. And what we learned was that was one of the big factors. There's 250 milligrams of calcium in a bag of spinach. But by the time oxalic acid takes its toll, you only absorb 25 milligrams.
Wow.
So, and they're also found in things like collard greens, potatoes, artichokes, squash, wheat bran, quinoa, and soy products. And that they bind to calcium, magnesium, and iron. So they're big problems. We call them everyday micronutrient depleters, and we go over all of those in the book.
Oh, good. Okay, because I'm thinking wow, people's heads are going to be spinning like, spinach is good for me. So if you look at let's say we're talking specifically grains, okay? So we say, we look at these things, not just grains, I guess. So some of these things are anti-nutrients, okay? So we weed out the ones that we don't really need. Let's say I don't really need to eat wheat. I don't really need to eat, better sources elsewhere, right? But then the ones that we feel, these ones have a lot of benefits, but they also are anti-nutrients. So nuts and seeds, that's a big one. So is there a way that you can eat, you just mentioned you can cook the oxalates out of food, I suppose, like the foods that have oxalates, but the phytates. Okay, let's say we have nuts and seeds. What can you do with them to make them more less of an anti-nutrient, so we can utilize the good nutrients that you find in them?
Any single time you have anti-nutrients, you can soak, you can sprout, and you dump the water out, and that takes out a lot of the anti-nutrients.
Okay, like how much? Would you say, 80%, or would you just some so that it's a little better? Is it a lot better?
It's a lot better.
Yeah.
It's a lot better. They're much, much safer to eat. You have to imagine a nut or a seed gives off these weird things because they don't want the plants to go and eat them.
Yeah.
This is their natural
They're protecting
defense
themselves. Yes.
Exactly. So why are we eating something that still has that natural protection in it?
Yeah.
So you have to prepare things properly. And that's another thing that we learned as we traveled around the world, that these other countries understand how they create their foods a lot better. So they are naturally sprouted. No one had to tell, this guy in the Amazon that he had to go sprout this plant over here, but they understood that, they had been taught that, and they were still doing it the way their ancestors had.
Yeah, in Rich Food, Poor Food, we not only have a recipe for soaking, but we actually give you a chart going over each type of nut. So if you want to sprout an almond or soak an almond or cashew or peanut, telling you how to do it, how much salt you add, how much water you need, and for how long. So it gives you a sprouting chart there. It's so simple. Just do it before you go to bed at night. Put a bowl of the nuts out, put the water in, put the salt in, put a little cloth over the top. By the time you wake up in the morning, it's done. You dry them out, and you go either that or in the store. Oftentimes, you can just there's a lot of great brands that sell them already pre-sprouted and pre-soaked.
We listed those in there. That's the same with your nut butters. There's a lot of companies now making sprouted nut butters.
Wow, that'd be great. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, and then so we just can't leave grains without talking about cereal. So, I mean, cereal, a lot of kids are getting up. That's what they're eating the first thing in the morning, and that sets their day. And also an alternative to cereal for a breakfast.
Okay, well, fantastic. I'm glad you asked that, because cereal is one of those things that has like almost the worst ingredients possible. And not only is it sugar, but it's the wheat. It's this. Every single thing in there is made to wire your child for failure for the rest of the day. One of my best memories of growing up was that my dad used to make me cream of wheat or cream of buckwheat.
Yes.
It's now what we do. And it is delicious. So buckwheat is not wheat. Buckwheat is a seed. And it is a delightful breakfast cereal. So it's really delicious. The other thing we like to do is we make muffins. And it's been proven that you'll stay satiated longer during the day if your breakfast has fat and protein. So perfect breakfast is an egg and bacon, actually, back to what our grandparents did and kept them healthy. Additionally, we like to take protein powder with an egg in it and some fat added to it and make an instant muffin.
Oh.
And it is so fast. We have a recipe on our website for protein-packed muffins. It's 45 seconds in the microwave in a mug.
Oh, wow. What if you don't want to use a microwave?
If you don't want a microwave, I was just going to say...
If you don't even have a microwave...
I don't have one.
I know, either do we. You can make it in the oven. And we have at our website.
Yeah, it just takes 4 minutes in the oven. So it's really easy with that. Also, some other tips for breakfast. If your kids are like, okay, I can't find a cereal, like I don't want to feed them eggs and bacon. So you can go Greek yogurt with a little bit of, organic protein powder sprinkled in, maybe some nuts or seeds that are sprouted. That's an easy one. We love these little burger bites. We make them in the morning. We use our grass-fed organic beef. We just make a little burger patty, put some cheese on it, put an egg over the top. Kids love that, and that you skip the bun. You don't need that. Or, I'm from Norway, so I love salmon, and I eat my traditional smoked salmon in the morning with my organic cream cheese, and I think that's a good breakfast. So there's a lot of options other than cereal for both adults and kids.
Yeah, and you got to think outside the box, because it's not necessarily breakfast food, but it's like, what does that matter, really? It's just at that time. It's a different time of day.
Right.
Yeah, we actually make a really good... I make sometimes, I even had them for dinner because they're so delicious, with pancakes, a grain-free pancake.
Yeah.
Which is really, really, really easy to make. And kids love pancakes. It doesn't matter what time of day it is. You can have breakfast for dinner and dinner for breakfast.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
It's all food.
People sometimes, if I've cut wheat out of my diet, that means that I can't make any of those things. That's not necessarily true. We like buckwheat. I think buckwheat, which is actually a seed, it's not wheat. So people listening are saying, oh, wow, they're eating wheat. No. Buckwheat is a seed, also coconut flour and almond flour. Those are our three kind of go-to alternatives to wheat that we cook with, and we can pretty much make anything with those.
So then your baking aisle, you would say that, let's address the baking aisle, because those sorts of things, those are the alternatives to use in your baking, correct?
Absolutely. The only thing you have to learn is how to exchange things out, because coconut flour does not measure the same way wheat flour does. Coconut flour will dry up any recipe if you are not very careful. So you have to put a lot more liquid and some extra egg. So it's just learning those things. You're actually supposed to do it by weight. So if it's a quarter cup of wheat, it should be the same amount as a quarter cup of the coconut flour, which the coconut flour is a lot more dense, so it's heavier naturally. So just learning a little bit like that rather than sugar. We like to use stevia in our recipes.
Yeah.
Stevia is an all-natural sweetener, doesn't spike insulin the same way. And we use coconut sugar If we want to use a more bulky sugar, coconut sugar is probably the way to go there.
Okay. What about like a liquidy sugar? Like let's say a recipe calls for honey.
Well, honey is kind of a personal call. First of all, there's nothing wrong with honey as far as food. It's packed with micronutrients. Obviously, it's all natural. It's the only food on the planet that doesn't spoil. But what it does do is it spikes your children's and your insulin. So it's going to cause you to secrete insulin, which is a fat storage hormone. And it really just comes down to how much of that if it's going to be a once a month or once every other month kind of a deal, I wouldn't worry about it at all. But if you're finding yourself using it on a daily or almost daily basis, this could be problematic. So, if you can find an alternative, a natural alternative like a stevia that you can use on a daily basis, and then just leave the honey to kind of special occasions, I think.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, so, which one? Okay, condiments.
Condiments, make them yourself. They're really, really easy. Mayonnaise, for example, if you look at the grocery store mayonnaise, it is a combination of genetically modified seed vegetable oils and sugar. We don't want to be putting any of that stuff in our body. And it takes 5 minutes or less to actually make in your blender. And it tastes far superior. You can make it with a coconut oil. We make it with a coconut MCT oil blend that we sell called Skinny Fat.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's great because it gives you all the brain power of MCT and all the antibacterial from the coconut oil. Yeah. So it's a really good fat that burns fat, and you can't actually put it on your hips. So it makes a mayonnaise that you can use. Same thing with salad dressing. There's not a good salad dressing in the grocery store. Unfortunately, even the ones that say olive oil, it's debatable now whether or not they're actually using true olive oil. And most of them is just a drop of oil at the very end of the recipe for genetically modified corn or soybean oil. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So make those yourself. It's really, really simple. You can make it all ahead of time and just leave them in your fridge.
Yeah, and easy. Like, to make a salad dressing, you put a few ingredients in a jar and shake her up.
Exactly. It takes no time. One thing we really are getting hot on doing these days is infusing oils. Uh-huh. So we infuse our oil blend, our Skinny Fat, and we take just whatever herbs you like, or whatever's fresh in your garden that might be going bad. And you put it in the bottom of a pan, and you can just literally put it in the oven for 40 minutes at 130. And you get these amazing flavored oils. Okay. And you hardly have to do anything to them to drink dressings in.
And what kind of oil would you use for that if you're heating it up?
Yeah, well, that's what we created a product called Skinny Fat. And the reason we did that was because we wanted to have a liquid oil that was coconut. We love coconut oil, but the problem with coconut oil is it's solid at room temperature, and it makes everything taste like coconut. Yep. So that kind of ruins it for that. So what we did is we patented an oil that takes organic coconut oil, and infuses into an MCT oil, which MCTs are medium chain triglycerides that actually come from either coconut or palm oil. We put them, super infuse it into the coconut. So what it does is it makes it so you can't taste it. It doesn't taste like coconut anymore, and it's liquid even in the refrigerator. So you can make salad dressings out of it. Mm-hmm. So the heat point on those are around 350. It's same as regular coconut or a good olive oil is right around that same heat point. So you put it in the oven at about 300 to 320. It's under the smoke point, and it infuses the oils perfectly.
Okay. Awesome. Great. Okay. So, and then I'm just going to jump to beverages really quickly, just to mention that, just watch the sugar, right? That's pretty much what you're looking at with beverages, and you're looking to hydrate, and beverages can carry a lot of sugar because people think, juice is good for you because it comes from a fruit, but it's really got tons of sugar. What else might you say about beverages?
It's that you completely right. With beverages, it's the sugar content and the coloring agents. Coloring agents are really, really bad, especially for children where they've been shown to actually give attention deficit disorder. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, even the juices are now colored because they want red to be, apple to be more yellow, or whatever the flavor is that they're looking for. They think that if it's more colorful, that's going to give you that. So that's another thing we just want to watch out for. There's other ingredients like phosphoric acid, which is in soda, and that depletes micronutrients. There's all sorts of other ingredients that we don't want. Brominated vegetable oil is one that they've recently tried taking out of sodas. But soda just in general there's no reason for a child to be drinking soda. It's one of those products.
And those sport drinks, like that's a big one. I really want parents to hear this because, I did some coaching with a sports team last year and nobody would believe me. I would say, do I see any blue tongues, red tongues, blue tongues? Okay, I don't want to see that when you guys come to your game because you're just going to end up crashing and burning halfway through because of the sugar content. And then there's a whole bunch of chemicals in those drinks, those sport drinks.
Oh my goodness, yes. I mean, Gatorade just got into a big problem with brominated vegetable oil, or BVO, which is, thought to be carcinogenic. And now they've said, oh, we'll take it out of there. But the question is, why was it in there in the first place? And you make a great point. There is no such thing as neon blue liquid or neon red liquid like those tongues get after you drink these sport drinks. They're oftentimes also, they can be filled with caffeine or caffeine-like substances, which are going to, some people want energy out of them. That's the big new thing is you drink these, chemically laden, sugar-laden, caffeine-laden drinks, and people think, oh, I'll lose weight or I'll have energy. That's not the kind of energy you want. If you need to have an energy drink, or one of these 5-hour energies, or one of these monsters or rock stars or any of the different ones, there's a problem. You're supposed to have enough energy to make it through the day. And again, we always come back to micronutrients, but it's because really and truly they are at kind of the center of what you need to know about how to be healthy. And it's those micronutrients that actually that help your body to derive the energy from the foods that you're eating. It's vitamins and minerals that say, hey, let's derive these carbohydrates, these fats, and these proteins and help them to be digested so that our body has the energy or the calories that you need in order to make it through your day. So don't go on one of these crutches. There's all kinds of problems in there. I mean, again, just read the ingredient list and you'll quickly see that they are far from natural.
Oh, excellent point, Jayson. Thank you. And you know what? I mean, I can't leave this interview without asking you about snacks because kids, I mean, maybe we like to snack more and maybe they like to snack more because our kids are eating so many carbs, like carbohydrates. And I know we're not looking at macronutrients really so much, but they're eating a lot of sugar, a lot of stuff that's going to spike and crash and spike and crash. So maybe they're just more hungry. They want to snack more. And, if you're eating more nutrient dense foods, you're snacking less. But I still, I'm thinking these kids are going to want to snack a lot still, or at least some. So do you have any tips or ideas about snacking?
Absolutely. And you don't have to give up everything. And that was one of our points in this.
Yeah.
It'd be really foolish for me to say to a mother, you'd never go down those last 2 aisles.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not going to happen. The kids are going to need something. So we just go over, basic different options. If you're going to choose a potato chip, make sure it has real potato in it. Choose a sweet potato maybe instead of a regular potato as well. And make sure that the oil that they use is maybe a coconut oil as opposed to a genetically modified seed oil. We basically just give them a lot of tips like that on different things. Nuts and seeds make great snacks. Additionally, for gluten-free, we like a product called Mary's Pretzels.
Mary.
What's it called? Mary's Gone Crackers.
Yeah, Mary's Gone.
I love those. They're gluten-free, and they come in different flavors. You can make your own cookies. You can make your own ice cream. We give you guys a lot of recipes for stuff like that. Unfortunately, we do put in the book brands that we found that did it well. They're not available everywhere. But just as a last message, one of our main things to tell parents is we want you to go to the grocery store. And we want you to tell the manager what you want to see in the store. Because the manager is going to do it. You might think he's not, but this is his job. His job is to make the most sure that all the customers keep coming back. And stores get requests like this all the time. And they actually start stocking different things. We actually have a resource on our website, the Rich Food Resource Center, where we have all of the SKUs, those little numbers on the packages for every single product we like from the book.
It's like 40 pages.
Yeah, and you can download it, and you can circle which ones you want your grocery store to have, and you can just bring it in. Really want for people to understand that the power of what they stock in your grocery store is up to you.
Yeah.
Not up to them, and they will slowly make changes as we request better things.
Wow. Great point, Mira. Great point. I love it. So So there's a ton. I mean, not just, you have so much information, both of you, available for people, and not just in this book, but also on your website, in all the work that you do, and you're pretty easy to find. And so it's specifically in this book, Rich Food, Poor Food. There are other things that I wanted to talk about that you can find, parents and caregivers listening, if you just kind of have a look at their book, and there's like lists of chemicals and additives, with some details. That's really great to look at. And also they have head-to-heads in the book as well that sort of put, this product against that product, and really demonstrating, what this poor choice is, as opposed to just picking up something a little different right next to it on the shelf that can totally and completely change your health and the health of your kids if you just pick this one over that. And also, too, like I mentioned, the website. And so can you just share with our summit participants about, your current projects, the website, URL, and anything else you'd like to mention to people listening?
Sure. So the website where you can find everything that you want to find is Calton, CALTON, nutrition.com. And, there's so much great information there. You can learn about our Calton project there. You can go to the Rich Food Resource Center there. We got a great micronutrient sufficiency quiz. It's the same quiz we give to our private clients, and it's absolutely free. It's right on the main page where you'll come right onto the site. And if you are interested in seeing where you may be falling on the micronutrient deficiency sufficiency spectrum, I encourage you to take this. It's, like I said, it's about 50 questions, but it really goes over your lifestyle habits and what you're eating and everything, and will give you a good snapshot of where you're starting, so that as you put all the things that we talk about into play, you can really see improvement. So that'll be on there. Our other book, Naked Calories, is a great place to start to understand what really micronutrients are and how they affect your health.
And basically, if they come on and sign up for our blog, they'll get a weekly newsletter from us that has new recipes and has where you can find us on TV, because we're on a lot of media internationally, and that's a great place to start to really get to know us and to get most of our materials.
Great. And you're filling out that form and finding out where you're at with micronutrients and that sort of thing. It's not meant to say, you're not doing this right. You should do this, blah, blah, blah. It's really about empowerment, finding out where you are and what you need to do to get you to where you want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't be discouraged. It's all about awareness.
We always say that the worse you start off, we love that, and you should love it too, because you're going to get up the furthest.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. You got so many great changes you can make, and just stay positive. Make them as your own pace, and never let anybody tell you that the way you're eating is wrong. Mm-hmm. That is your journey.
Yeah, yeah, and bring your kids with you.
Absolutely. Teach them when they're young. I mean, I'll tell you, Rich Food, Poor Food is full color. And we had a bunch of mothers call us and be like, I just left it on the counter because I wanted to see what my kids would think. Uh-huh. And they're all going to the grocery store with it now. They love it.
Yeah, they're both booked back to me. This is great.
And it's because we laid it out the way we did. And we wanted to make it fun with lots of colors and pictures and, little Quizlets for you.
I have to say, it's a beautiful book. Wonderful job. Thanks so much for being part of the Children's and Teen Health Summit, Mira and Jayson. It was wonderful to have you, and thank you for spending an extra lot of time with us to give us the goods on the goods.
Well, thank you very much, Carla. Thanks for all you do as well.